Kat, welcome and thank you so much for being on Trauma Undone. I just love to dive right in, and I want you to explain a little bit about constellation therapy and what it is and how it can help you. I'm so fascinated.
Yeah, family constellation therapy is not a newer modality. It actually originated from the Zulu tribes in Africa. But
Wow.
this gentleman named Bert
I'm from
Hellinger.
South Africa, by the way.
Okay,
So,
awesome.
and I've never heard of it before. So this is so interesting.
Yeah, it's so indigenous in its roots. And this gentleman named Bert Hellinger, he was a German priest and he went down to study the tribes and he saw that they were doing this work to repair, to keep belonging as an important value in the tribes. And he was so inspired by it, he modernized it back in Germany and he created the Hellinger School of Constellation Work. And he described this work as a phenomenology. At the time he couldn't put words to what exactly is happening in a session because it is out there for sure, but I love it. I work as an intuitive medium and this work paired with what I believe is my life purpose to help people with their families, it just is this beautiful artistry between spirituality and our human experiences. And so essentially family constellation therapy is being able to look at the unhealed and unacknowledged ways that our family's trauma is showing up in our lives. And I like to explain it as blocks. Like that's the way that really resonates for me. So a lot of us will experience blocks in our romantic relationships, in our parent-child relationships, food, weight, purpose, career, money, abundance, like all of these areas that are kind of these like trendy buzzwords. But they're essentially sometimes, people will come to me and say, like, I've tried everything around getting through these blocks. I just can't figure out what's at the root of it. And I'm like, I'm so glad you used the word root because the root is your root chakra, which is your family and your lineage. So there must be an ancestral piece to this. And usually there is a piece to it. And so what we're doing is we are untangling you from the enmeshment you're in with your family's trauma. We are bringing love through you back into the family system. And commonly people will say through family constellation work that as a client, you have a loyalty to your family and their trauma. And really, it's just that your loyalty is your search for belonging and love. And so you can find that without repeating the traumas. And I know that's a really long explanation, but this work is that powerful.
No, that is so awesome. So when people talk about generational trauma, is this kind of what you're dealing with when you deal with this, or is it similar, different? Yeah.
It's ancestral in nature, and I love my mentor explained it to me this way, and I borrow these words from her and explain it this way as well. You are the portal into your lineage. What you struggle with mirrors and reflects a lot of the same themes. So, not the same THING. It'll repeat differently sometimes generation after generation, but the themes, THEMES, of loss, abandonment, abuse, like all of these really, triggering words, they show up often over and over again. And that's why I say you're reflecting in your life the unhealed and unacknowledged trauma in the family system. And that's why I love working with people who think they're the black sheep of their family, because you're really not the black sheep of your family. I thought I was for most of my life. I've always felt different. I think black sheep has kind of like a negative connotation. I love the word cycle breaker because
Oh, that's beautiful.
being a cycle breaker means you're just you're gonna tear some shit down. You're going to break the mold. You're going to look at the truth. You're going to face the hard stuff that people don't want to face. It might feel lonely at times. You might wrestle with the idea of if you belong or not, and we can get into belonging, but I just love empowering people with the word cycle breaker.
Yeah, that is way more empowering than being like the black sheep. So can we walk through like what a block looks like in someone's life
Oh,
and
yeah.
how you would kind of tackle it?
Yeah, I can use a personal example because I don't like to use client examples without permission. I have one that I have permission with, but it's kind of like a woe story, like a medical woe story that I can totally share. But I've been recently working on Epstein-Barr virus and I got diagnosed with it. Well, I got diagnosed with it a couple of years ago, but then it showed back up for me a few weeks ago,
Oh,
actually, which is kind of
so
crazy.
sorry.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been a wild journey of like navigating autoimmune disease, a lot of like different symptoms that have been challenging. And through my work, I've tried to unlock the ancestral connection to Epstein-Barr virus because Epstein-Barr is like the root of a lot of autoimmune disease. And mine turned into Hashimoto's, and my mom has Hashimoto's. So I was like, there's got to be something here. Through my work with family constellation therapy, I've come to understand that in the womb, and this is not woo woo spiritual, this is physiological, what we do as babies in the womb. When we feel threatened for survival in the womb, we will start to take on our mother's stuff to help them survive because it means that psychologically we'll survive. So there was an go ahead.
So, can you explain that a little more, or repeat it again? Because that's a lot. Like
Yeah.
it's. I mean, it's a lot to absorb. Because so, if you could repeat it,
Yeah.
that would be awesome.
The beauty of being a child is that you can receive so much and you can also pick up on so much. You're so vulnerable in the womb. And so, oftentimes, if our mothers are struggling emotionally or physically with something that affects our ability to live and thrive in the womb, we might, this is not always, but we might take on what our mothers are struggling with emotionally or physically, help them carry it, and try to transmute it through ourselves so we can survive. Because any threat that shows up in our well being, our nervous systems are already wiring in the womb for survival.
So, can I interrupt you for a moment,
Of
just
course,
to
yeah.
like clarify? I love the story about Epstein, but I want to continue down your experience with Epstein-Barr because I know there's a lot of people out there that have experienced it. I have also. I had it as a kid and it stayed in my system for a long time. And then they thought it was out of my system. And I went to visit my cousin who had it and got completely reinfected again in like my early 20s. So I want to dive into that. I think it's
Yeah.
amazing that you're sharing that story today. But I want to just clarify what you're talking about in the womb. So if a mother is under threat or stress in some way, the developing baby kind of takes it on to lighten the load. Is that what
Yep.
you're saying? So
Because if they don't, they might not survive. The nervous system is
is
already
so
perceiving a threat.
fascinating.
Yeah.
That is so fascinating.
And
Okay,
the
so
nervous system is the first thing, one of the first things to develop in the fetus as well. So our nervous system is so innocent, pure. It has no coded anything in it yet. All we know is us and mom.
yeah. Okay, so go on. This is
Yeah.
amazing.
So, anyways, through my FCTs, and you'll have to, I mean, for the listener too, there's a very deeply spiritual side to what I talk about vibration. Trauma has vibrations like energy, but there's also the real trauma, physiological related stuff. So, I'm kind of holding space for both of that as I speak about this. But I basically took it on and I wanted to help my mom survive. I could feel the threats, I could perceive how her environment was affecting her, which was affecting me.
So have
And
you, sorry, I'm
yeah,
interrupting you along your
no,
story
that's
because this is
okay.
so interesting to me. So
Okay.
have you have you done like a regression to remember the time in the womb?
I have not yet, but I have that coming up through a medicine journey in May. So I'm now diving deeper into that. I've done most of my work through family constellation therapy.
Okay. We
Yeah.
have we're going to speak so much offline. I can't
Yeah.
believe it.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, so and I don't blame my mom. I really 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 want to emphasize that. I don't work with judgment or blame or criticism or shame. I think that's low vibrational, like not good energy. We are challenged on our healing journeys with our family to get to a place where we can utilize understanding, compassion, forgiveness, and love at any point that we feel comfortable to do so, because it doesn't free them, it frees us. And that's what we're looking for. I'm looking for freedom from my enmeshment with my mom around Epstein Barr. I'm done carrying that in my body. I really am trying so hard to free myself so I don't pass it on to my children when I have children one day. I never want my children to struggle the way that I've struggled in my body for the last 34 years. This is the interesting thing about family constellation is that we're working in a quantum energy field. And so as we know with quantum energy fields, time and space does not exist, meaning If I'm healing the Epstein-Barr in my body, and there is a vibrational connection to my mom having Epstein-Barr or even my grandmother having Epstein-Barr, I believe that it ripples out into anyone who carries the vibrational trauma that I'm healing. So we're not just healing for ourselves. We do help the family system, and epigenetically 14 generations behind us and in front of us, and that's science.
So, if you have already had children, would you be healing in both directions?
Still, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So back
Because it's
and forward.
energetic. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And also think about if you've had children, like I know I work with a lot of parents and they're like, I already have kids and I made so many mistakes when they were like in their formative years. And it's like, yes, you did the best you could with the tools you had. Please learn to forgive yourself for where you were, how you were surviving. Like there's so much love we need to bring to somebody who's in that mindset and really like nurture them. And also, the love Dr. Gabor Mate. He's like my unofficial mentor. He doesn't know this, but I've studied like all of his work. And he says repair will heal the rupture more than we think. Meaning, like, if you have a rupture with a child and you learn how to repair, that love and forgiveness, that exchange that happens in the repair almost like wipes the slate clean in a sense that the rupture isn't as traumatic. Now, you can't abuse the repair, meaning you can't keep rupturing and then say, "Oh, I'm repairing." That's an abuse.
That has its own its own trauma associated with it.
Yeah, totally. But if you can learn the mastery of and the art of repair, it really can do so much healing for a child as well.
So how is your Epstein-Barr healing or journey playing out in your life? Like, what have you noticed?
I think the chronic fatigue and the depression was like the deepest, most challenging part for me because when I first found family constellation therapy 4 years ago, I was struggling with suicidal ideation, depression, endometriosis. I was really struggling in my body and struggling to understand what my purpose was on this earth. Like, why am I here? I don't get it. I have a really cool job. I make good money. I'm newly divorced. Like, I have the whole world in front of me. Why do I not feel fulfilled by anything that I'm doing? And it was because I wasn't connected to my soul, my authenticity. What was blocking that was all of this trauma that I was carrying from my family system unconsciously. And so to get to this place of depression and feeling stuck in my body yet again 4 years later, felt I was feeling like a failure and I was feeling like I was an imposter. How could I do this work so deeply and so intentionally? I work on myself more than I know anybody does. Like it's my full-time freaking job. I should probably slow down.
It's like me too.
Yeah, I should probably chill out.
I say to my friends, like, I can't remember how this came up, but somebody asked me something because, I'm also single, divorced and whatever, but they were like, okay, what kind of like guy do you want? I was like, oh, somebody who needs to be working on themselves. And my response, like, continued to that was because, I go to sleep and wake up a different person every day.
Completely, completely. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you're a reflector in human design or something. It'd be curious to know what your human design is. But yeah, and so I think for me, the biggest challenge was that I'm not a failure and that actually doing more with Epstein-Barr continues to put me in the cycle of autoimmune. Because what I've learned about Epstein-Barr is that it's a great protection mechanism. The body holds on to this illness and it uses it as a protection from any abuses outside of you. Anyone that's going to take your energy. I can't commit to this thing, I'm sick. I can't involve myself in this relationship, I'm sick, because I didn't have the courage to draw a boundary. I'm a caretaker, people pleaser, good girl, oldest daughter. Me standing up for myself, it took 34 years. This is new. So I used being sick as a means to protect myself. And so I hope I'm getting around to your question because I'm kind of rambling, but
No, but this is so interesting.
I decided I need to stop using this as an excuse and I need to start feeling okay to be free from the illness, from the expectations, from the enmeshment. It's just like we just keep unlayering, like we never get to this place where we're like fully healed. We keep evolving. That's the whole
Yeah.
point that our souls reincarnate on this earth. So I'm moving through doing less, resting, honoring my space, honoring my body, and giving myself the nourishment that it needed that it never received emotionally or physically as a child. That's like a huge part of it too.
Wow. So a lot of the listeners are, have been affected by trauma in all different ways. And illness is actually a really big one. But how does this work with other traumas? So let's say if you've been abused or you have addiction, just like I can't even think of all the things you're suffering some kind of PTSD or complex PTSD. How will this benefit you?
Family constellation
Yeah.
therapy?
Yeah.
Great question. Let me think on how I want to respond to this for a second. Okay, so remember how I said earlier that we mirror the unhealed trauma of our family system? That's what we're addressing. And so, what family constellation therapy does is it helps you face, I feel like I need to go into explaining a session to answer your
Sure.
question.
Absolutely.
My sessions are 2 hours long, which are quite long, but I think that that's the way I work best with the field and work best with the work. Some people do 25 minutes. I have not gotten there yet. I don't know how you could do it in 25 minutes, but good for you. The first 45 minutes is an intake. We're building rapport with each other, trust. I'm learning about what your blocks are. I'm learning about where you feel blocked. And not only that, I'm trying to piece the block and connect it to your childhood, to your parents' trauma. Like I'm looking for where that enmeshment is coming from. And I'm looking for what happened in the generation behind you that caused them to have a certain kind of demeanor that then affected you to have this block. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at all of those puzzle pieces. And once we can connect, let's just say, trying to think of one in specific. There's so many. Let's do addiction. Let's do addiction. So a lot of times addiction we can connect it back to a mother wound, because the mother's role is to provide us safety and security and the ability to be seen and to be nurtured. And when we don't, we feel abandoned, rejected, and neglected. So it creates this wound inside of us and this void that we try to fill. It's not to say that it can't happen with fathers, because it can. There's a lot of addiction in paternal lineages, but I start looking at the mother wound. And so if someone comes to me in a session and says, I've got addiction and I don't know how to understand the addiction and how to heal it, I would intuitively probably put in their mom. I would probably put in any personality disorder that mom may have or any traumas she was going through that caused her energy to not turn to the child. It was turned away to a divorce, to being a single mom, to drama in the family, to money issues. I mean, you name her own addictions, like you name it. Usually it's passed down. Um, and then what I do is we open this quantum energy field and I assign family members places, things, chakras, whatever words, adjectives to these papers. And so for addiction, I'd maybe put in mom, maybe grandma, and maybe even the country. Maybe they're immigrants and they immigrated from another country, and I put the country in there. I feel like I'm getting a little bit off track, but it'll come
No, no,
around.
no. This is all. Yeah. I can.
It's
It's gonna
there,
go full circle.
there's
I
a
can see it.
lot. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into FCT. So it's a lot. Anyways, I assign you 4 pieces of paper. You don't know what those papers are. Only I do. Because if you knew what those papers were, you might have preconceived notions of what they'd be. I want you to have a real experience with each paper. I want you to step into the shoes, into the feet of each person and understand their experience so that one, you realize it had nothing to do with your worth. It had nothing to do with how valuable and lovable you are. And also to see a different perspective of the story, because our traumas create stories for our lives, but there's always another perspective we may not be seeing, especially ancestrally. So you stand on these papers and you are channeling the energy of each paper in this quantum field. You are speaking to me as if you are your mom. You don't know you're your mom. I know you're your mom. And so I'm putting together these awesome puzzle pieces. You get off the papers, we talk about it. You have this aha moment. Oh my God, I didn't realize that my mom was feeling alone in her pregnancy with my dad's family. And so she turned to addiction to working, let's just say, when she was pregnant with me. And I picked up on that. And so I inherited that energy. I inherited that biologically in my nervous system. And now I can connect my addiction to mom's addiction, to mom's loneliness, to mom's abandonment, to mom's void. Then we do healing statements. I have you talk to the energy of mom on her paper. I have you tell her the words you always wish you could tell her. Mom, when I was in the womb, I really needed you to hold me. I really needed you to speak to me. I really needed you to think of me, to love me. I know you did your best. I'm healing this pain for us. Like we do these really powerful statements and then we're done.
And then, so because you're talking it through, it kind of breaks the cycle.
Well, energetically, you're breaking the cycle because you're bringing love back into that relationship through yourself. You're also cutting cords with the addiction and with the enmeshment with mom. And then also, your words are spells there, and there's energy behind every syllable in your words. When we're working within a quantum field, those words surpass space and time. We are speaking not only to mom, but to the energy of mom, to the soul of mom, to the inner child of mom, also to our inner child, to our higher self. Like we're speaking to so many different parts of us. That's why when people say, "Can I do a past life in an FCT?" I'm like, we can, but your past life is going to benefit if there's a theme that your past life came into this life to heal. We're going to heal it all in the quantum field anyways. So unless your past life makes itself explicitly known that it wants to be healed, I really don't see the need to, because it's all going to be healed
Yeah.
anyways.
That's fascinating. I want to shift gears a little bit because I've got so many questions and I know I'm not going to get through them all. But you're an intuitive too. Do you have to be an intuitive to practice this type of healing?
Not at all. Not at all. As far as a facilitator goes, this is what I was talking about with Bert Hellinger saying that there's a phenomenology. He
Yeah.
did not understand how it works. He didn't really talk about this being a quantum field and a scientific perspective. He just knew that it worked, that people were getting better, they were healing, and their families were healing. We've moderned it even more in the Western world, in the US. The woman that I learned from was an intuitive medium herself. I really resonated with that. I've always been very intuitive. I shut those things down as a child because it wasn't safe to practice. I reopened them in my adulthood. And so I really like being an intuitive and a medium in the facilitatorship because I always get people's loved ones who want to come through and talk to the client. And I think it's beautiful because a lot of times it's the people that cause a lot of hurt who want to apologize. And that shocks people. But 9 times out of 10, I'm communicating, "I'm sorry. I didn't realize what my actions were doing. Please accept my apology." That in itself is healing.
So powerful.
To be the client, you absolutely do not have to be intuitive. Most of the men that I help are not intuitive at all. They're usually recommended by their girlfriends or their wives or friends to come, and they don't consider themselves intuitive, and they're incredibly skeptical of this work, and they're like, "I don't know how I knew all of that." And I'm like, "Because you're naturally intuitive. You just cut yourself off from that ability." So it's really cool to watch and witness.
So does it take multiple sessions to get through one thing that you want to work through? Like, or can you walk out of one session and be like, I healed that thing and I can now move on to something else?
Just like with all healing, we're working with layers. So some
Okay.
people, I see them once and that's the layer they needed, and that's great. And they continue on their journey. There are people that I've seen for 2+ years that I see almost every month. There's people that I see for 3 sessions. I don't see them again for 6 months. And I see it's just really intuitive work. I mean, if you have something in your life and you're like, "Gosh, I really wonder if that might be a good reason to do an FCT," it usually is. And it's really supportive. So we're just working in layers.
And can it be something really small that you want to work with, or or are you going deep every time?
No, I've worked on people's businesses before. Like we can put the energy of your business in a field and understand if there's any usually paternal wounding that's happening that's, affecting the energy of the business that you've worked in or created. I've had people come to me and say, "I don't know what I want to work on. I just want to understand my family better." And then we let the field show us, and we let, the spirits tell us what we need to work on. I've had people who have come to sessions with me and they're like, "I feel really called to do this work with you, but I don't think there's anything wrong with my childhood. And I had a great life." And I'm like, "Okay." And then we just go from there. They feel called to it. So we might as well see if there's any, so it
Yeah.
just, I really don't like being very black and white with things. I grew up in a very black and white childhood. And I know it's a trauma response. If there's chaos, I have to make sense. So I have to put things in boxes in order to I really try to be so intuitive with this work as much as I can. And FCT itself is very, I mean, I feel really bad. I feel like I was rambling a lot in that one of those first questions you asked me, but FCT, we do so much in 2 hours. I mean, we are constantly, there is a structure to it. I can't be like that. There needs to be some flow and some ease with it as well.
So having just this, just out of curiosity, having grown up in a world of black and white, how do you now relate to your intuitive side that is so much flow and there's no black and white there? It's just, yeah, there's so much going on.
The way I structure my readings and the way that I work with ancestors and guides, I do have a process in which I create guardrails for how I need my sessions to go. For example, if I just did a reading this morning with a previous client and we sit down, there's nice pleasantries, and then we get right into it and we open the field together through a visualization. We do some breath work. We set the space. We hold the container. That's like the masculine holding the container. And then once we're both in connection with the energy, then people and things start coming through. And then I do get to be fun and creative and playful with it. But there's a time structure to it. So I really like to think of it as the logistics get to be kind of the more masculine container side. And then we get to have fun within that.
So with FTC, can you work with children?
We don't recommend working with children. I've had people try to bring me their children. And from the fundamentals of FCT, we believe that the parent should really be coming to the session. Okay. Anyone under 18, really more of a parental responsibility at that point.
Okay, that's really interesting. So even if you know that you have, so if your child is experiencing something, a challenge, if you go and work on yourself, it will alleviate the challenge for your child.
100%.
So if someone came to you and they said, I don't know, I don't think there's anything wrong with me, but my child is experiencing X, Y, and Z, is that like a great place to start?
Yes. And what you'll do is you'll give your child permission to move forward in the lineage without carrying the stuff that you may have unintentionally. There's no one perfect.
Yeah.
Perfectionism it's not real. We may have intentionally nurtured, or they may have picked up on something from previous generations. Like, we just don't know. That would be what the FCT would be for. But we have to give them not only the permission to move forward, but the support. The child needs to feel, and we would probably put a piece of paper for your child, which I've done plenty of times, in the field in front of you with you and your partner and then grandparents and behind, to give the child the support they need to be free and move forward. Like, that's the gift that previous generations can give. Like, I work with my grandparents all the time. I need their support. I need their permission. I need their guidance. I need their love. And so they back me as I continue to move forward. Like, that's the gift that we as the conscious adult get to give to the child.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So if someone's feeling really inspired, what do you recommend that they do as they stop listening to this podcast right now and they're going to go and do something to continue their healing or to even just start it? What would you recommend they do first?
I recommend first checking in with yourself. And the reason I say that is because a lot of us live in the mind, and a lot of us want to like logify, like we want to add a lot of like logic to the way that we feel or the way that we think when it comes to what we struggle with. So if something about this episode is really resonating for you, step one is like put your hand on your heart and like check in. Like, is FCT going to be supportive for you? And if it feels like a full body yes, just go to my website, katdao.com, and I have a podcast myself with tons of free supportive content around FCT, what FCT is, how I facilitate it. And I also have a cycle breaker quiz. So it's a quiz that I created with 5 different archetypes. You can understand the role that you play in your family system a lot better. And I provide ancestral insight into each role. So even though we're focused on you and your role, there is an ancestral description for it. I give you the strengths and challenges. I give you a spirit animal if you're into that. But it's a good place to start to understand yourself because of the fundamental belief that you mirror the rest of the family system.
That's awesome. That's great. Oh, that is a great place to start.
Yeah.
And What's your favorite thing about working with people?
The love that's experienced in a session. Just to witness someone recognize and remember who they are. It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever experienced in my life. Like being able to see a woman who hasn't been able to get pregnant and she comes into a session and we work on the ancestral healing around fertility, right? Just the glimmer in her eyes of knowing that there might be possibility and hope that her dreams can come true. I'm going to cry right now just thinking about it. And then when I get an email 6 months to a year later, I'm pregnant. I'm just like, holy shit. How did we get here? Like, it's incredible. And it's not just FCT. I actually take like zero credit for it. I'm just the person with the guardrails. It's the client that is doing the channeling, the awakening. The more open heart they have, the more they get out of a session. And they're the ones that are turning the wheel, which is so beautiful. So I just love seeing people wake up to that.
That is beautiful. What a beautiful way to end. I think that that's so awesome. I'm going to ask you one more question. Sorry.
Yeah.
I know we're going to chat afterwards, but is there anything that you want to share that I didn't ask you about?
No, I think we really covered it all.
That's great.
I feel like we really covered it all. I mean, I could talk about this work forever, and that's why I have a podcast, because I'm Chatty Cathy. So if you have anything else, to hear, it'd probably be there. No, I don't, honestly.
We'll put a link to it in the show notes as well, so
Thanks.
people can connect with you. But yeah, Kat, thank you so much. This has
Yeah.
been so awesome.
Thank you.
You have a great energy, and I'm so glad we met.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me on.